Hey everybody, welcome to another action-packed, exciting episode of Scotty's Record Shop. On this particular video, I'm going to tackle the studio discography, all 15 albums of the band Genesis. It's kind of funny, I was thinking about this before I made the video, or, started doing this. It's like last week's video when I did a video on Yes, which was another progressive rock band. It was like, I'm not a big progressive rock fan. I mean, I don't mind these bands. I actually like both these bands, but I'm not like this big progressive rock aficionado type person. And what's going on? I'm making two progressive rock band videos, discographies in a row. I guarantee you, next week will not be a progressive. I actually have what's coming next week right here. This is who's coming next week. Haha. You'll find out next week. But it's definitely not a progressive rock band. Excuse me. So anyway, let's get into it. 15 albums in total. There's quite a few. And actually, in one case, I thought I had one of the albums on CD. I've got everything else on CD, and I have most everything on vinyl. But the first album by them, which was originally called From Genesis to Revelation, I don't have on CD. I thought I did. I'm going to pick it up, though, because I like it. You'll find out how much I like it in a little bit. So what I had to do is go downstairs and pull this out, which is, I don't believe this is how it originally came out in America, but this is an early 70s pressing on London. And this one is called In the Beginning. So when I'm ready to talk about that album, I will pull that one out. All right. So, and I will also get into when I personally got into Genesis. It was not during the progressive rock era, but that doesn't change my view of the band. Some people who get into the 80s stuff, don't really like the 70s stuff. And a lot of the people that got into the 70s stuff, the progressive stuff, don't like the 80s stuff. I'm kind of in between. I like certain aspects of both. And again, you'll see how this boils out. Let's go to number 15. Number 15, I don't like this album. There's a couple of albums that I really don't like. We Can't Dance. This is... I don't know. I mean, this was, and it's funny because after Invisible Touch, this sort of doesn't have as much of an 80s tinge to it, and I'm not a big 80s person, like the 80s sound. But I like Invisible Touch a lot better than this one. This just did not hit it for me at all. It was the last album Phil did with them too, at least the last studio album that he did with them. It just doesn't... it's shit. The only way I could say it, it's just crap. For me. Kids from the 80s love this album. I know people that love this album. But that whole Phil Collins, I can't dance. It's like fingers on a chalkboard. Some people hate Phil Collins' voice. I don't mind it, but in that song, I get it. So at number 15, We Can't Dance. The next one is better, but is it? I mean, it is Genesis, because you still got two members. You got the last album they ever did, Calling All Stations. Different lead singer, guest people on this album. This was a Rutherford and Banks album, really. And it's better than this. It is. But it's just not there. It doesn't have it. And I don't, it could have been and should have been better on paper, I think. Because the guy that they have singing here is a really good singer. He's definitely not Phil Collins. Doesn't have that, but he definitely kind of tried to be a little bit Peter Gabriel, sort of, a little bit. He had that a little bit in his voice, but still. Number 14, Calling All Stations. Goodbye. This one is going to be one that maybe some people are going to be like, why is this so low? And I don't know why it's this. Again, it's one of these. I've been aware of this album since the early 80s. I got it in the early 80s when I got into Genesis. But it just doesn't... It's okay. It's not a bad album. From this point on, these are all good albums. But this is, out of all of their quote unquote good albums, this is the one that I connect with the least, and I don't know why. And then there were three. 1978. This point in time, Steve Hackett had left, and I think that might be part of it. They hadn't quite gotten it together yet. I mean, Steve Hackett was an important member of this band, even though he didn't get as much playing in as he wanted to. He added a lot to this band, and he's missed on this album. I really think he's missed on this album. Not a bad album, though. I mean, it was commercially. This was in America where really they kind of started, and they kind of started getting their pop sensibilities, I guess. I mean, "Follow You, Follow Me" was actually a top 40 hit here, not in the bottom part of the top 40, but it still was a top 40 hit for them. And honestly, in '78, I remember the song, but it wasn't. It was like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's a nice song, but I didn't like rush out and buy the album. But yeah, this is number 13. Like I said, I want to like this more than I do, and I don't. And I get it if this is way up on your list of I love this album. I get it. It's well played for a band that was supposed to die again. They were going to die after Peter Gabriel left, right? They were done for. The press said they were done for, and then when Hackett left, it was like, this isn't going to end well. They did pretty damn good. So, but anyway, number 13, and then there were three. 1983, Genesis. This is a good poppy, proggy poppy record. Although really the main thing on here is "Home by the Sea" would be probably the proggiest thing on this. But I mean, it's well written pop. These guys are very good musicians. Phil Collins was really good at writing pop songs, and it was good. I'm still kind of burned out on this, and one of the songs that really drives me nuts because is "Illegal Alien." And it's not the subject matter that drives me nuts, it's the instrumentation. It sounds so corny. And after hearing different things, earlier progressive rock, it was really tough to hear this. It just like cheesy keyboard sounds that just, what the hell is Banks thinking? Anyway, I mean, but overall, it's a good album. It's a really, really good album. I remember getting this when it came out, and was thinking, yeah, it's a good album, and it wasn't a huge surprise after Abacab. They've been progressing towards stuff like this. So anyway, number 12. Number 12. Genesis from 1983. This next one gets put lower on some people's lists, and I really don't mind this album. I had to divorce myself from the fact that this was a progressive rock band, because by this point in time, I knew about their earlier stuff and I was getting into it, and it was like, okay, it was logical to go from that to this. It just is. Invisible Touch. Throwing It All Away is a beautiful song. I just think it's a really, really nice song. There's some Land of Confusion, things like that. This is not it's a pop album. It's a well produced, well played, well written, honestly, pop album. This is, a lot of people who were into the progressive stuff at this point, they really were washing their hands. Some of them were. I know that some of you who you just like the entire catalog, and I get that. But and the newcomers, there were a lot of young kids that got into them right about this time, and this is the stuff. And again, they probably like this. This is the stuff This is Genesis. This is the cool stuff. The progressive stuff, bleh. But this album really wasn't bad. I remember listening to it, and like I said, I had to take and say, okay, this is Genesis, but this is not Genesis. And if I divorce myself from Trick of the Tail or Selling England by the Pound and said, okay, this is just a different thing, I was able to handle it and say, okay, this is all right. And this really is all right. I mean, it was a huge seller for them. I think they got like 4 hit singles off of this here in America. So they really did good with this album. And it sounds great too, audio-wise. I think it sounds pretty damn good sonically. But anyway, at number 11, we have Invisible Touch. Number 10. It's kind of debatable when Genesis really kind of... Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm going to do this. Before I do this, I'm going to pull this out. Ta-da! Okay, so their very first album, originally called From Genesis to Revelation. They'd put out a couple of singles before that in 67 and stuff, and they didn't go anywhere. But this is an interesting album. It's kind of a Baroque pop kind of, at points, very, for the most part, very mellow. This had 3 out of the 5 classic members, Banks, Rutherford, and Gabriel, were on this. And you know, it's not what Genesis would become. But honestly, I like this. I've got to hunt this down on CD because like I said, I thought I had it, but I don't know. I thought I bought it, or I went through some, because I have over there. I have a ton of CDs that are in boxes and everything. We moved them out of the storage unit. Now that the wife is gone, we have room for things. Hooray! Anyway, but yeah, this is an interesting. Again, I had to divorce myself from Genesis, the progressive rock Genesis, to listen to this and say, this is pretty good. Same thing here. This is not what Genesis is going to be. This is a young, but the writing on here is pretty good, and it's an interesting listen. So anyway, at number 10, technically what would be From Genesis to Revelation, but in here it's in the beginning. Okay. Now, some people kind of, and I tend to agree with them, this is sort of where Genesis kind of started becoming Genesis, when they really started getting the progressiveness a little bit. And 1970s, Trespass. I don't want to say I always kind of liked this album, but the more I listen to it, the more I like it, because it's kind of like it's between, you know, it's in between. Let me see here, something like let's see here. It's in between this and this. It's kind of still got that Baroque pop kind of element at times, but it's got the progressiveness. You know, it's got the knife on here, which is a great epic tune by them. We don't have the full classic lineup yet, but it's still really good. It didn't do crap in England, though. That's the funny thing. They really, their first 3 albums did not do well in their homeland at all. Of course, here in America, we didn't know anything about this in 1970. I talked to some friends of mine that were involved in radio in that time, and they're like, this wasn't getting played here in America at all. Or at least, I mean, maybe some kid from England came over and played it on a college radio station, but other than that, it did not get into anybody's rotation. It's too bad. But anyway, a good album. Like I said, I'm liking it even more the more I listen to it. Actually, the 2 albums that are coming up, the more I'm listening to them, the more I'm liking them. So anyway, at number 9, Trespass, 1970. This is where the classic Genesis lineup came in. This is where Phil Collins and Steve Hackett came in. And it's an improvement. It's more progressive. Steve Hackett, I I just got to give him a lot of credit. Even though he's this kind of tends to be more of a keyboard band at times, Hackett really adds a lot of texture. He's a brilliant guitar player, and he starts it on here. And you got Phil Collins too. He's a great drummer. We're talking about Nursery Crime, 1972. We're getting there. This was really the beginning of the progressiveness. This was really where it started to crank up a lot more. 1972. And not much to say about this album. Again, similar to Trespass, the more I'm listening to this, the more I'm starting to like both of these. They're just, I don't want to say, they were probably a little lower on my list, actually. Say 6 months ago. But like I said, when I started listening to the cat, because one thing that I like to do, excuse me again, is when I'm about ready to do somebody's catalog, there are some albums I just know. There are albums in here, I know it's number one. I don't have to listen to it to know it's number one. But there are albums that are like, I want to take and go back and give them another try. And these were ones that I kind of went back to. I was like, yeah. There were a few others too. But these two really just moved up for me. But anyway, at number 8, Nursery Crimes, 1972. So I got these right. Next one. The last album that Steve Hackett would play on, obviously the first album, and the last one, 1977, Wind and Weathering. Oh, I want to mention too, if you want to hear a great album, in early 1973, I should have brought the album upstairs, I don't have it on CD, is a live album, just simply entitled, I think it's Genesis Live. And it's got stuff from here, basically from these two albums. And the versions on there are even better than the versions that are on these. Great live album by Genesis. I just wanted to throw that out there. Wind and Weathering. Steve Hackett was becoming very disenchanted. He had already put out a solo album, and it was a good solo album back in '75. He was tired of being stifled. He had a lot more to give, and he realized that, if I do a solo career, I can just do whatever I want and play as much of it, as I want. And he proved he could do it too. I saw an interview where he was like, I didn't know if I could take and actually make a solo album. I don't know if I had it in me. And he did. And like I said, Steve Hackett puts out some very interesting, maybe not totally uniform, maybe they're different, but they're good solo albums. Anyway, Wind and Weathering was the last album that he did with them. This is for me, it's kind of it's a winter album. It's kind of a gloomy day, cold, just like this cover. The cover really represents it. In some cases, album covers really represent the music that's inside. And this cover really does. This is just kind of this cold, kind of wintry, fall, rainy kind of day album. It's not bad. It's actually pretty good. It's actually really good. I shouldn't say it's pretty good. It's really good. It's midway through my list, but this did not give an indication on where they were going to go next, because where they went next was, and then there were 3. To me, very different, but very good. And I do enjoy this better than there were 3, obviously. So at number 7, is that where we're at? 2, 3, 5, 6. Yes, number 7 from 1977, Wind and Weathering. Since I'm mentioning live albums, they put out a live album, Seconds Out, I think it was called. I've got that downstairs too. And it had Hackett on it. Great album too. Great live album. It had stuff from really the classic period, from Selling England by the Pound up through here. and it's a great album. So anyway, just saying that, throwing that information out there. Excuse me. Number 6 is where I actually discovered Genesis. Really discovered them as a group, as an album. Duke. This is a very interesting album. I remember hearing "Misunderstanding," and going, "This is a pretty good, catchy pop song," and didn't think anything of it. Didn't buy the album, but when I heard "Turn It On Again," when that started getting played, it was like, this kicks. This is a great. Okay, these guys are interesting. Went out and got the album, and it's like, it's a good album. I think that it kind of dies out as I'm a vinyl guy. I used to, what I mean. So side 1, side 2, I think side 1 is excellent. Side 2 kind of starts to dip a little bit. It's front loaded. I think more. Like I said, side 1's great. Side 2 starts off really good, and then it kind of. But a really good album at this point in time. They still had their prog-ness, but they were really starting to dip into their pop sensibilities. And at this point in time, I think it worked really well. I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of. I know people that really like the progressive era stuff, the Peter Gabriel stuff, who actually, a lot of them like this. And that's cool, because I like this too. And it's at number 6 from 1980, Duke. Then we get Abacab, 1981. And you know what? I actually, upon listening to it, because I originally was going to put Duke above Abacab. Am I holding that up correctly? There you go. Duke above Abacab. Going back from past memory of listening to these things. But when I listened to Abacab, it's like, I like this better. It's stripped down more. It's dare I say, more synth poppy, more. How did I hear it? Kind of new wavy kind of feeling. I mean, it still has its prog sensibilities, but you're bringing horns in and stuff like that, and this is getting more to be a Phil Collins kind of situation here, and even on Duke, I mean, "Misunderstanding," which was really the song that got this going for them in America, was a Phil Collins song, and the demo, I've heard the demo of that, and it pretty much the same exact thing as what you get on the album. So Phil Collins was kind of starting to really drive the ship, I think, at this particular point in time, a little more. And, of course, by this point in time, he had his first album, Face Values, which did incredibly well. This is just a good, solid album. I thought it was in step with Duke. I remember when this came out, or shortly after it came out, went out and I got it and thought, yeah, this is another good album. And at this point in time, I still had no clue about their progressive rock leanings, because I was like 13 or something like that, right? 14 years old, 13. And quite honestly, I wouldn't have liked it. I was into prog. I really didn't like progressive music back in the late 70s, early 80s. I said that actually in the Yes album ranking that I did last week, but that would change. But yeah, at number five, Abacab. Number 4 is going to piss some people off. I respect the fact that this is number 1 for a lot of you. I get that. I understand that. I appreciate that. We go through this almost every week, kids. I have to display a double album. And you know how I feel about double albums. I think that they are almost always bloated. 50 years later, I'm still trying to figure out what the hell this album's about. I've had people tell me. I've watched documentaries about what... By the way, for those of you who are visually impaired, I'm holding this album up. Actually, believe it or not, there are people who are blind. even blinder than I am, who watch these videos. Hi, guys. Anyway, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Some consider this their masterpiece. I think that the first album is pretty much great all the way through. I think the second album has some really awesome moments. But to quote from my video from last week, again, I keep talking about this Yes video. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. There's some padding on here, I think. And, you know, it's got some fantastic moments, but I think that they, after Selling England by the Pound, just like with Yes, after Close to the Edge, I think they got too confident and too sure of themselves. We can, because both of them put out double albums, you know, Tales from Topographic Oceans and Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, where it's like you either think it's the greatest thing they ever did, or you're like, nah, you know. I'm kind of in between. I like a lot of this. I could cut this down to a single album and it would be their best album, I think, or damn close to it. It definitely wouldn't be at number 4. But anyway, and this would be where Peter Gabriel leaves. After the tour for this in 75, when they came over here to America in 75. After that was done, he left to pursue his own solo career, and he did good. I can tell you that I am not the biggest... I respect Peter Gabriel's talent and his songwriting ability and everything, and even his musicianship, because he plays several instruments and plays them all well. But I'm not the biggest Peter Gabriel fan. Solo, I think his albums, he tries to go so many places that he loses me. You know, I appreciate the fact that he wants to attack all kinds of different types of music, but I've never been a huge fan of his. I like some albums more than others, and definitely some songs that are fantastic. You know, I feel like they kind of tried to go too far on this album, the band, and they went too far for me. I mean, but consider number 4 it's still up there. So, you know, don't kill me. If this is your favorite album, I get it. I totally do. At number 4, excuse me, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway from 1974. Number 3, this album really went up over the last year or so. I probably about a year and a half ago, I decided that I was going to listen to this album again. I'd seen a video actually where somebody was like, "Yeah, it's a great album. It's one of their best albums," and I'm like, "Are you serious?" And I went back and I listened to it, and I was like, you know what? It was just the right time. I've said this in more than one video. Just because you don't fully understand or fully get an album when you first hear it, put it away for a while. You know, again, like I said, if it's a genre of music that you don't like, then you're probably never going to like it. But if it's an artist or a style of music that you like, but you just don't necessarily dig it, especially if a lot of other people dig it, put it away for a little while. You know, the worst thing that'll happen is you'll pull it out in a year or so, and you'll still not like it. No big deal. It had been several years since I pulled this one out. And when I pulled it out, I was like, damn, this is really good. I'm talking about Foxtrot, 1972. Sorry. Think about that. 1972. Foxtrot. 72? Yeah, 72. Now I'm thinking about that live album, that Genesis Live. Genesis Live came out after Foxtrot. I don't know if I mentioned that. I think I did. And if I got that wrong, let me correct myself. That Genesis Live album that you should listen to came out after Foxtrot. 1970. This is where they really became what they were to me on the progressive side. Supper's Ready, all of side 2, 23-minute, multi-piece, epic. You know, this is just such a damn good album. Really, really, really good album. Not my favorite album by them, But it's up there, right? Number three. Uh, the second album with the original lineup, or the classic lineup, I should say. And at this point in time, they knew what they were doing, and they were used to each other, and they got it right on this album. If you find this album a little unapproachable, but you like Genesis, give it a try. Give it another try. I highly recommend this. Foxtrot. Okay. Number two, I've always liked this album. Two and one have once when I went back and originally started to look at the '70s catalog of Genesis, back in the mid to late '80s, these two albums I instantly cling to. I was like, this is just, and I didn't know the stories behind them. I didn't know anything about it, but number two is always going to be number two, and number one is always going to be number one for me. But number two is an interesting album because the critics and everybody said Genesis was done. Peter Gabriel, the shining star of Genesis, the front man, had left. Genesis said, a trick of the tail. This is just a great album. You got Phil Collins, who to me has somewhat of a Peter Gabriel-ish voice. He especially did a little later on down the road when he kind of really got used to really being a singer. But he, from what I understand, they kept looking for a new singer. They kept trying all these people, and nothing ever worked. And Phil Collins decided he was going to sing a song on here called Squonk. And he'd sang on Genesis albums before, believe it or not, as background, and he even sang lead, at least on one song I can think of. But he was not a lead singer. But once he did Squonk, it was like, I can do this, I think. And the guys realized, wait a minute, we already have our lead singer here. And I'll tell you, this is just a wonderful, wonderful progressive rock album by Genesis. Some people put this at number one. I've seen some ranking videos where people put this at number one. I get it. Actually, with these, it's easy to see this going to number one. I've seen it. It's easy to see this going to number one on some videos I've seen. Understand it. Same thing with this, and the same thing with number one. But 1976. Here it was on Atco Records here in America. And that's what I'm trying to think. Yeah, here in America, my vinyl copy of this is on Atco. They were on what? Charisma, right? Charisma? Yeah. Over in the UK and in Europe and stuff. But great album. Great. It's progressive rock. But it's great. And I don't mean, how can I say that? It's not like it would be bad because it's progressive rock, obviously. But if you are not into progressive rock, try to give this one a chance. Anyway, number two for me. Number one, I heard this album mid 80s and I never went back. I was like, this is a friggin' masterpiece. Very British sounding, kind of like if I ever get around to doing the Kinks, which I'm probably going to end up doing down the road. I'll probably end up doing the Kinks. Their catalog, excuse me again, they have a tendency of becoming very, especially in the late 60s, their albums, Village Green Preservation Society, it was really a British themed album that Americans kind of wouldn't necessarily get all of it. This kind of is the same thing, but my favorite Genesis album, period, 1973's Selling England by the Pound. Just, it's a perfect progressive rock album. It's funny too because I'm thinking about this now. I keep going back to this Yes video, the last one. In Close to the Edge, 1973. 1973 was a pretty damn good year for progressive rock. You had Selling England by the Pound, you had Close to the Edge, you had, right off the top of my head, even though these guys say they're not progressive rock, and yeah, they are and they're not, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. Right? 1973. What a hell of a year for progressive rock. Anyway, I don't even know what to say. This is just, if you've never heard this album, if you're a fan of this, and this is where you want to stay, that's fine. But if you want to get adventurous and hear what Genesis really was about, right here. My favorite album of Genesis, Selling England by the Pound. Alrighty. Let me know what you guys think. If you, I'm sure people have their different opinions. What's number one, whatever. What's number two. If I got some of the information wrong, politely, correct me. I'm good with that. Like, subscribe, share. All the usual things, because I really do appreciate each and every one of you. And as you know, I'm trying to get this channel to grow a little bit. So, anyway, until next time, peace and love.